Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, our listeners. Thanks to everyone, including Matt Zaglin, Kelly Cook, Jeff Wilkes, and everyone welcome our two new patrons, Sev and Anand. Yay! Welcome. Good to have you. On this episode of DTNS, Nintendo offers more details on the Switch 2. How much does a URL go for these days, especially when that URL is chat.com? And Scott Johnson has thoughts on Netflix removing most, but not all, of its interactive titles. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
Here in Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
We were talking about the 90s before the show, and we'll probably go back to the 90s in GDI, so stick with us if you can. But before we go into, nostalgia era, let's start with the quick hits. The European Commission has launched an antitrust investigation into Corning, that's known for its Gorilla Glass used in many smartphones. The EC is specifically looking into Corning's exclusive supply deals for phone makers and also glass processors, and if competitors have been shut out of the glass market, which would be competitive. If found guilty, Corning could face fines or at least be required to change its contracts to allow for more competition.
AMD's new Ryzen 7 9800X3D has gotten praise for the CPU's impressive gaming performance. It's an 8-core chip with AMD's 3D V-Cache technology. A few of you out there have been following this. Pushing strong gaming benchmarks, often beating Intel's Core i9-14900K in gaming scenarios. Outside of gaming, though, more of a mixed bag. It struggles to compete in tasks like video editing and rendering. The Ryzen 7 9800 X3D costs you $479 cool dollars.
Apple is set to be hit with an EU fine under the DMA, or the Digital Markets Act, after allegedly favoring its own payment service over competitors on iOS. So the EU is saying that Apple is blocking third-party apps from accessing its NFC chip, potentially limiting alternative payment options and reducing competition on its devices. Apple could face a fine of up to 10% of its global revenue unless it complies with the DMA.
Sony has officially discontinued its Airpeak S1 camera drone, which was marketed to professional filmmakers and content creators. The decision comes as Sony shifts focus and resources to other areas within its business. The Airpeak S1 was launched with high expectations, faced challenges in a very competitive market, and that eventually led to its eventual phase out.
Oh, the Airpeak drone, phasing out. Yeah, sad. Well, you have other options now. The Verge's review of the new $700 PS5 Pro is out, and it sounds like unless you sit really close to a big screen, the visual upgrade might not be worth the price. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. The PS5 Pro has a faster GPU, AI-powered upscaling, and added memory, but only for PS5 Pro enhanced games. While some games show sharper textures and better frame rates, the upgrades aren't universal, and some compromises in graphics quality are noticeable as well. All right, Scott, let's talk about Nintendo. What is going on with Nintendo? The company announced that the Switch 2 will include backward compatibility, meaning that games from the current Switch will work on the new hardware. That was something that a lot of folks were wondering would ever happen. This is designed to preserve access to the Switch game library, which wasn't possible with prior console upgrades like the transition from the Wii U, for example. Nintendo Switch Online, which provides retro games catalogs, among other things, will also carry over to the new console. So how excited are we about this?
Well, it's exciting in one way because we haven't heard much about this new console really at all, other than it's rumored to be announced in full. Like we'll get to see its features, what it looks like physically, all that stuff, sometime before the end of the year. I think they need to hurry up, but I'll bet we see something in December that gives us a little more information. But this is a big deal because a lot of people have been concerned about recent console shifts for Nintendo where they didn't carry forward compatibility to play the previous titles. Now, before I jump on them entirely for that, because I do criticize them for that, it is true that in the past they've done this with a few things. If you had a Game Boy Color or a regular Game Boy before you picked up a Game Boy Advance, those Game Boy cartridges would also work in your Advance. And then the same thing happened when they went to the DS design for at least a while until they changed a couple of designs. The cartridges from the GBA library would move forward into the DS library. And same thing goes for GameCube to Switch, to the Wii. Those little tiny GameCube discs also worked in a Wii drive. So it's not like they've never done it, but they're also kind of famous for locking things behind fake vaults and saying, well, you're not going to be able to play that again until we squeak it out somewhere, which drives a lot of piracy around their classic games and this sort of stuff. We've talked about this many times on the show. So This is a great foot forward to say, look, we live in a time where a lot of these games are purely digital. Yes, people are still buying cartridges, and we've yet to see where this slot will be. And will it be a new slot in addition to another slot, or will they all use the same cartridge format moving forward? Like, there's some questions about that they didn't answer yet. But if you have the games, especially digitally, you've bought them on the store, you'll be able to download them and play them on whatever the Switch 2 is. And that's a big deal. It's also a big deal that the online services will carry forward, because that means anything you bought on those services, anything you are currently playing competitively, even free-to-play games, those will carry over. That means your scores, your saves, all of that stuff should move forward with the device. And one would hope in perpetuity beyond whatever the Switch 2 is, if it's the Switch 3 or a whole new world for Nintendo. That's the big question for me, because they do have these short-term, yes, we're moving the library forward moments. They've always had them. But they never carry through the entire catalog, say, like your Xbox library for the most part, or even some PlayStation titles. Certainly PCs are very good at this, of just carrying it through for decades. Whether they're going that far or not is yet to be seen. But I do see this as a positive thing, even though we don't really have that much information outside of this about the device.
So for anybody who's sort of like, well, hold on, why would Nintendo have not done this before? Why is this a big story now? Why do you think Nintendo is such an outlier in the space of just being like, we do things the way that we do things?
Yeah, I think they're really three philosophies, and all three big players in the market adhere to one of them. You have Microsoft on one end, where they, at least outwardly, have been very pro backwards compatibility, bringing old titles forward, making them work again, essentially just keeping people's investments active in the ecosystem. And they've made that a priority. Sony is somewhere in the middle. They've done this with recent stuff, so your PlayStation 4 games often, for the most part, will play just fine on a PlayStation 5. The 3 was using a very different chip architecture and very different kind of console back then. So it wasn't as easy. So they haven't worked that hard to bring that stuff forward the way Microsoft has. Really negligible results, but those are the two differences there. With Nintendo, they've always kind of been the one who's like, enjoy this Mario experience while you can, because once the Super Nintendo goes out of production, you'll not play it anywhere until we say where you can play it, and we'll bring it out again, and you'll pay for it again. It's just kind of their
and that
thing.
Does work, and
Sure.
Many times that's sort of like, we're just this is you're gonna have to sort of chase this fun. That works until it doesn't. I think Nintendo probably has enough competition at this point where the company's like, all right, that doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, I think that they could do both is what I would like them to do. I would like them to be able to say, here's a game that is very unique to the system it's on, to the era it came out, and you should be able to keep playing that and having that regardless of what device you're on. I think they should be able to do that, and also say, and guess what, this fall we have a completely remastered version of this game, Advance Wars for the DS, and now it's in full 3D. They actually did this. Bring that out also. So people who have Advance Wars are happy to play their little pixelated thing they bought in 04. Let them keep doing that. And for those who want to play this hot new, $49 download that looks beautiful and is all blown out and remastered and everything, let them have that also. I think you actually hurt yourself by saying, well, there's no other way than to do it this way.
Right.
Let them have a choice. You'll still sell tons of the remakes. And you'll do just fine. And I do think Nintendo will come around. I think they kind of have to, because gamers are starting to expect this. And if you don't do it, you're weird. So,
what is the game that you're most looking forward to playing on the Switch too?
Oh man, a bunch of Switch 1 games that I haven't played because I feel like the console's too long in the tail. Like there's some games, in particular the latest Zelda title, that I did not pick up and play at all. Not because I don't want to. It's just because
Breath of the Wind,
or the Breath of the Wild was the first one. The second one was whatever the second one was. The point is, Breath of the Wind. I want to play that on a console that's more capable, that will give me more than 30 frames. Like this kind of stuff I can expect from a new console. And these older games are still going to look amazing. And by older, I mean 5-10 years old. So, that's what I've been waiting for. So there's actually a stack of those. The latest Metroid game is one of those. There's a bunch of these where I would love to finally play them, but I don't want to play them on my device I bought in 2017.
Yeah. How do you feel about URLs that you might have bought back in, the 90s, Scott?
Well, I have a lot of them that I've sat on since 1996 or so, and I don't know if any of them, I don't think any of them are worth anything. So tell me more.
You never know. That's actually always a fun conversation where I'm like, oh, do you have URLs that you're sitting on? And people are like, oh, I've got 10. Do you want to know about them? That kind of thing.
Sure.
But in this vein, OpenAI bought the URL chat.com. As of this morning, chat.com now redirects to OpenAI's AI-powered chatbot, which is ChatGPT. An OpenAI spokesperson confirmed the acquisition to TechCrunch over email. Now, chat.com has a bit of a storied history. It was registered in September of 1996. That's when, people were doing some land grabs. Last year, so 2023, it was reported that HubSpot co-founder and CTO Dharmesh Shah acquired Chat.com for $15.5 million, making it one of the top 2 all-time publicly reported domain sales. The domain name doesn't appear to have changed hands since it sold last year, indicating that OpenAI isn't necessarily hosting ChatGPT on Chat.com, so this probably doesn't represent a brand change, but it might if OpenAI actually owns that. OpenAI declined to say how much it paid for Chat.com. So, Scott, what the heck has happened?
Well, I think what we're seeing is the continued, since the 90s, there's been a value placed on high target URLs that are short, that are easy to say. They might even just come to your name naturally, your voice naturally, and that you can just quickly type in and get to where you want to go. I think Chat.com is one of those. It would be like buy.com or,
Chat.com, back in the day, I would be like, well, what's it for? But now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a $15 million URL.
Yeah. it seems clear to me the reason that is a completely different story, but the reason Musk held on so tightly to that x.com domain is because that is a prime piece of unrealistically acquired real estate. You can't find single to 4 name URLs anymore that are worth much because they're all taken. They're all just taken or being squatted on for ridiculous amounts of money. So I think that's a big part of this. And it doesn't matter what phase of the web we're in, 2.0, 3.0, moving on to 4.0. It will always be an advantage to have a URL as long as we're using browsers in the future, and see no reason why we won't be for a considerable amount of time. Short, easy to remember URLs are a huge marketing boon. So that part makes sense to me. This also could be temporary, right? If you go to chat.com right now, like you said, it just forwards to ChatGPT. That makes sense. They've acquired a thing that is no longer out there causing people to go there if they misunderstood where to go. Well, I thought this was ChatGPT. Well, it is now. Now they go there and it works. But I also think they could do things with the URL later. Maybe not a full rebrand, but chat.com could become the public-facing version of what 100%. They do. Or something
imagine,
like that.
You're watching the Super Bowl. Right. And so there are a bunch of advertisements and, people who hear something like ChatGPT, some of us know what that means. All of us on the show knows what that means. But you have like someone being like, I don't know what that GPT, I don't want to do any of that tech stuff. But chat.com, oh, okay, that's easy, even though it's the exact same product. I think that's probably where the company is going. It's like, okay, we've definitely captured the tech person market, but what about all the other people who can have fun with this?
Yeah,
that's where I think the company is going with that.
I agree with you. ChatGPT, still to this day, even though I know fully what it is, and we're all integrated into the zeitgeist of internet culture, we all know what ChatGPT is,
it's
what
a terrible
version
name.
it is.
It really is.
It's a terrible name. It's too, I won't even say too technical, but it just has...
It doesn't mean anything.
No, it doesn't mean anything to normal people. Exactly.
Yeah.
But chat going to a thing and chatting to a computer, to an AI, and asking it questions and getting results. That's really good marketing. So the fact they didn't have anything prepared for this other than just a forwarding is a little weird, because I think they could have really come out of the gate strong with it, but they could still do this. So I guess it is kind of a rebrand. It can still be ChatGPT. Go to chat.com for more. Like, that's it. Like, that's an easy thing to say in the Super Bowl, and everybody will go.
My words, they're going to do, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not a betting man, but they're going to have a commercial where it's like, do you want to know everything about the universe, people of the world? Chat.com. I swear, I know that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, they kind of are. They just haven't put the marketing wrap around it, and they haven't made it public facing like that, but they could.
It really is still a conversation that I feel like I'm having with like tech-minded folks. And we all, either agree or disagree about how this AI or LLM works, versus another one. And there are other options. OpenAI is often brought up because it's in the news a lot, but it's only one of many. Right. And so ChatGPT is, again, like I've had like my own family members who aren't even, they're relatively the same age as me. They're just not in my universe. Mm-hmm. Be like, well, why is it called that? It just sounds so weird. Is it like a NASA thing? And I'm like, no, it's not a NASA thing.
That's the trick. It sounds all highfalutin, and it isn't. Or at least they don't want it to be for the average person. When they started the thing, they had high-minded technical ideas about where this was all headed. Now it's a much more common thing to just know what ChatGPT is, or if you don't know, it freaks you out a little. So bring it toward the center a little bit, get people a little less freaked out. Chat.com is easy. People get how to go, and bam, there's your rebrand. I think that they probably are headed there eventually, but it seems clear to me with the forwarding we're going to be a little bit
even if it's like chat.com and then you get a QR code.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense. So kudos to them. Don't know you paid for it, but it was probably more than $15.5 million, which is what the previous person paid for it. If you have thoughts on ChatGPT, chat.com, QR codes, or anything that we talk about on the show, we want to hear from you. Email us at feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Netflix is going to remove nearly all of its interactive titles by December 1st. So only 4 will remain. Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend, Ranveer versus Wild with Bear Grylls, and You versus Wild. The move follows a statement from Netflix's GP of Gen AI for Games, Mark Verdu, to Stephen Totillo from GameFiles that the company just simply isn't developing interactive titles anymore. So, Scott, what do you make of this?
I think it leads down the same road that we had a discussion about last weekend, the week before, about Netflix pulling their AAA studio that they were building prematurely. Well, not prematurely, but only 2 years in, no game to show for it. They just shut it down. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I think what we're seeing is like a consistent way that Netflix does experimentation. And this is yet another example of it. They'll experiment with something, and some of this has been around for a while, so it's not like it's overnight or anything. But they'll try something like this, whether it's games, mobile games, we're buying a studio, we're building a studio, we're going to have interactive TV, whatever it is. They do a little bit, they dabble. They don't exactly market it hardcore. They just sort of let it live on the service. Yeah. And it shows up in press releases, but the general public usually runs into it because they're just, yeah, exactly. They usually, what'll happen is I'm on Netflix and I'm screwing around and I go, Bandersnatch, the heck is that? I know what Black Mirror is. That's how people discover these things. So my thinking is twofold. One, this is them experimenting again and going, okay, we tried that. We have some cool tech from it. We'll keep a few around, but yeah, we're good. We're going to move on. And that's just their modus. But the other thing I think is going on here is the numbers were just bad. Like sometimes that's just really all it comes down to. Not enough people cared to do it. And also not enough people cared to do it more than once. You know what I mean?
Were the numbers bad because it wasn't marketed appropriately?
Well, you could put a ton of blame on them for that, I think. I think that's fair.
Because I mean, I have Netflix. I'm not not really the target market for this, but I also felt like I was like, where, like, I don't see that stuff. Where is it?
It's not easy to see. It's the same as their game stuff, although that's starting to be more visible and above the fold. But the problem with that is that discoverability is bad. They don't market it, so that's also bad. And then once you've done it, why would you go back? Like that's the other thing that this needs to find. Like the magic sauce in interactive fiction, outside of gaming and things like that, where you're watching it and sort of choosing your own adventure. The trick there is for them to figure out a way to make it feel new every time you go there and not go, oh, well, I already did that. I don't need to do it again. It's a little bit like a ride at Disneyland. Imagine one that you love and you've done it, but you've done it 50 times. You're like, I need something new. There's that problem. And so here's what I predict they're working on, because there was another announcement this week. You guys may have covered it. I haven't heard all the shows this week, but there was talk that they were going to really engage with some generative AI stuff to build content. And no one's really sure what they mean, whether it's for games, for television, for what it is. But if you think about it, one of the potential is, I'm going to use the big P word on this one, the potential use cases for generative AI done ethically, hopefully. I don't know how you do it, but anyway, let's say you do it ethically somehow, magically. This seems like a good place for it. Now you're talking about interactive, reusable content that is generated potentially on the fly based on your choices. And you don't have to go do triple shoots of a scene because there's 5 different outcomes or 3 different outcomes in your triple shoot. Well, if the user clicks this, we need to have the actors do this. If they click this, they're over here in a fire. Like, that's expensive, time consuming, and a nightmare if you're trying to keep production pipeline going. So to me, it seems like a little bit of a no-brainer is to move maybe into some kind of hybrid animation thing. It doesn't have to be live action, but it's all generated either based on your choices or there's just a ton more of it pre-generated because it's at a fraction of the cost and time investment it would take to do it with real people. That's just a guess that they're working on that.
I also, these are not games that I've ever interacted with, so I don't have, hands on the ground, feet on the ground, whatever the term is.
Something on the ground.
Experience, anything on the ground. But I also, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, for example. Funny show, like it. I don't think I watched the latest season because, I don't know, there are too many things to watch. But I'm sort of like, is that something that I want to control myself, or do I want to just sit back and watch the show?
Well, it's another.
And I think that's
another
something
great point.
that Netflix was sort of wondering, like how many people want to maybe do both, maybe do one or the other. Yeah,
I think that's. I'm really glad you brought that up because there is this whole other issue of what our adoption of it, and it goes to the numbers whether they were good or not. We don't know what those numbers were because they're not saying. But my guess is there's a big part of this where, look, I come to turn this on to be entertained and have something crafted for me. I want to hear a story and I want to see that story play out. And I don't want to tell part of it. Like if I wanted to do that, I really would go play a video game.
Yeah, like I want a choice. I want you to just give me. And if I don't like the episode, I'll be like, that was a horrible episode, right? Yeah. Friend of mine type thing.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is if there's a way to squeeze out of this, again, AI is probably your only way to do it. But squeeze out of this almost a near infinite sort of a real, video version of Zork where I get to go northwest, east, south, or whatever, and my story's different than anyone else's could possibly be. And if I did it again, my story would vary like that kind of variety is a holy grail for all kinds of content. And I think that if they're working on that, and they already have the interactive tool part of it that people have been doing already with these shows that are either being pulled or a couple that are staying, then they'll build that out and try that. And then we'll get another experiment. People will either love it or they'll hate it. And if the numbers are great, they'll keep it. And if they're not, they'll move on to whatever's next. This is just Netflix's little brand now. It's what they do.
Yeah. I can see. So I can see, let's say that Black Mirror, isn't going to come back for a couple of years.
Yep.
And Netflix is like, let's have everybody play a game and like share it socially and, have fun and be like, look at, what my situation turned out like. Like that kind of thing can keep the momentum in the lull between, seasons of shows that people really care about.
That's another good way of aiming it, right? To say, look, you're waiting 2 years for this final season of whatever popular show it is. Why not fiddle around in this little middle space? It's kind of like a game, and it's your favorite characters doing their thing.
Yeah, like it doesn't go away.
Yeah, and they haven't really marketed any of what they've done so far like that. They've all treated it like little extras, like, hey, you like Kimmy Schmidt. What if there was a little separate thing over here that you did? And they haven't really positioned it as like a hold me over. But yeah, that's an interesting point. Like that's why I think they do this way is they're not sure what all the angles are yet. And so they're just poking. Just like, well, let's try this. Oh, that kind of worked. That was fun, but didn't really exactly achieve the goal we wanted. Like that actually sounds like a lot of fun, as much as I don't, some people probably get put out of work and things change and all that. But I like the idea of experimentation. It's easy to pile on Netflix, but I actually think this is smart.
Well, I mean, Netflix is not the only company to be like, you know what, maybe we should do this, and let's hire a whole team. And, a couple of years later, it's like, yeah, let's maybe scale back that team. Sure. And yeah, that totally sucks for anybody who lost their job. But, if it's not resonating, then you kind of have to go back to the drawing board.
Right. Yep. Fair point.
Well, if you have thoughts on anything that we talk about on the show, I keep telling you this, but I'm going to tell you again. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send that email. Speaking of emails, Derek posted this comment on Patreon about our discussion of eVTOL trips from Manhattan to airports. Derek says, Blade operates Airport Manhattan helicopter service that flies multiple times per day. I used it to fly from LaGuardia to Manhattan 2 years ago, and it was money well spent.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, we were talking pre-show about where all these airports are. The confusion around us figuring out where the location is for all the airports in New York was a good argument for this. You know what I mean? Like
totally.
Quicker shuttling between things. So yeah, I appreciate it.
I have to get on a flight for the first time in, can't even tell you how long it's been since I've been on a plane, more than a year, well more than a year, on Saturday. And, I'm like, all right, I'm going to Burbank, and it's Saturday, so like the traffic might not be that bad. Like I'm telling you, everything would be solved if I was just like, and I've gone into the sky and burp, and now I'm at the airport.
Yep.
That would solve everything.
How much easier would it be if you could just walk out your front door, you're in the air, and you're off? Oh, man.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if there are other, EVs in the air.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like the freeway.
Mm-mm.
No.
Lots of air. We got a lot of air.
We got a lot of air. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. We've got a lot of room. All right. Well, still early days, even though we've been talking about it for years. But Scott Johnson, we talked to you for many years as well. Let folks know where they can keep up with your latest.
Well, the place to go would be frogpants.com. And the reason you would go there is you would find access to all the podcasts. There are numbers of them. I think hitting any real possible interest you might have in some area or another. And I think you should go check it out. I also put some really cool stuff up on the store over there. Lots of reasons to check out frogpants.com and really none that I can think of not to. So check it out. It's frogpants.com, and thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Scott Johnson. Patrons, stick around for our extended show. Good Day Internet keeps rolling on. We're going to be talking about if Minecraft trains Minecraft. Where does that get us?
Whoa.
I know. It's kind of crazy. You can catch our show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2000 UTC. Actually, no, it's 2100 UTC because we're in standard time now. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We'll be back doing it all again tomorrow with Justin Robert Young, who might or might not have any thoughts on politics. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.